Here we go. The first game casted of TCL Season 1. This is Grazian Daniel, otherwise known as dgrazian, in the blue, and Two Meows, otherwise known as QQ, in the red. QQ here, I'm super excited to see what he has planned. He looks like he's bringing something that's pretty normal looking. Squirrel Toad, though. Toad is that one not so normal unit. I love this deck. I love Toads. Let's see how he wants to use them. And dgrazian here, also with the Badgers. And he is bringing the Moles as his second tier 1. So I'm just excited to see what these guys are going to bring as our first match. This first round that these guys are playing in is in the competitive division, which is our new... We've got 2 new divisions, competitive division and open division. This is the competitive. And this is a Swiss tournament style format for the first section. So we have 18 players in our competitive division this season. And after a couple weeks of Swiss, where the results of the first week will inform your opponents for the next week, and it'll kind of sort everyone into the code S and the code A, or the upper half and the lower half. So nobody is going to be eliminated today. This is just for placement into the upper or lower divisions, and scoring later on might go back. So the results do matter long term, but nobody is going to get knocked out of the tournament just yet. We're going to have plenty of games for everyone before anyone is knocked out. So hopefully there's a lot of play. There's a lot of opportunity for players to play different opponents. Welcome into the stream chat here. Urbane Olive. We got Jason Blades and Scar here as well. The Open Division is actually going to be a little bit different of a format. Open Division is a full round robin, so there are 8 players in the Open Division. It's a fairly small group this tournament, and so that's going to be a full round robin, and in the first couple weeks, everybody will have a chance to play every other player, and then we'll go into a playoffs after that. But 18 players was far too much for a round robin for the competitive, so that's why the different formats. Competitive division also has a small prize pool. We had one player agree to donate a Steam key to an RTS game that was released a couple years ago, and then I am going to fund a bit of a prize pool as well. So if anybody would like to donate and support that prize pool and support the continuing community of Tooth and Tail players, then go ahead and let me know. You can either donate to the stream here, and I'll put all of that towards the event, or you can get a hold of me and we can figure that out another way as well. So Skunk is finally taken out here. Grazian is trying to push in. QQ trying to get his first Falcon up, and he is going to get pushed back, but with only 3 squirrels, that's not enough to fight reinforcements. So dgrazian is going to back up. He has his second Skunk here, and he has some mines, so it's a pretty good aggressive position. But Falcons and Toads are pretty good defensively as well, so he's going to set up a little bit of Skunk gas here. Lots of long range on these Skunks this patch. We've got a question in the chat. Urbane Olive asking, is this test patch or vanilla? So, let's catch this fight first. Toad connections coming in are pretty good. Wipes all the Skunks. The Moles are unfortunately not ready yet. It looks like dgrazian dropped the Mole Warrens and then actually just pulled the trigger on the attack before the Moles were ready. That or QQ is moving out. Sorry, bad observing on my part. At any rate, looks like QQ is actually taking a pretty solid lead at this point. Neither side has an expansion, so the economies are the same. But QQ has a pretty decent-sized army here, whereas dgrazian kind of has to start over again. And yes, the answer is vanilla. All of the competitive division will be played on the current live patch, whereas the open division is a little bit more flexible with that. There are some live patch and there are some test patch games of the new beta coming out. QQ coming in for a bit of a snipe on the side here. He's holding the Toads in the back, ready to throw them in when dgrazian's army gets here in this little choke. dgrazian is just going to fight, shooting across these trees here, so the toads do not get a good connection. But it is maybe too little too late. There were 3 pigs killed, and dgrazian is going to have to go right across the map and try to counterpush, and QQ has to hold here. He did lose his army, but he killed enough pigs. This is going to be the last fight here. Skunk Gas goes down. The Falcon doing plenty of damage. Unfortunately, the Falcon is not being targeted down. There was a Warren targeted instead, and the Falcon is just chewing through everything. That and QQ's reinforcements. That's going to do it. QQ takes a big lead in this game, and it's just a matter of time. Second Falcon joining up with QQ's army here. He technically has a smaller tier 1 army, but there's only 1 skunk for dgrazian, and the Falcon targeting hasn't been on point this game so far, so I am confident that QQ can take it, especially with 2 farms to 1 right now. QQ is a very strong kind of off-meta premier player, to use the old lingo. He's very experienced, and he knows his way around this kind of defense with the Falcons. Alright, here we have this last fight. Falcons again proving their weight in gold. Looks like dgrazian was trying to target 1 down, but all that's left is the skunk. And with that, QQ is going to take game 1. Alright, game 2 here. dgrazian in the blue and QQ in the red. QQ showing a little bit more normal of a style for him, which is absolutely not normal of a style for anyone else. So he's got double tier 3 and an artillery cannon, drumfire cannon. QQ is one of the few top-level players to consistently play with the drumfire cannon, and he has his own way of using it as well, so we'll have to see what he has in mind. This map does not look like a good arty map at all. It's not, I mean, if anyone can make it work, it's QQ, but it doesn't look like the usual approaches with the artillery cannon would really work on this map. And it looks like QQ is going to go for a 6-farm single Warren, and he queues up, so we would call that a 6-farm safety. That way he has the Warren if he needs it, but he's not slowing down his economy too much. Meanwhile, dgrazian is throwing down all 8 of his farms and dropping a few mines to help defend. QQ there going to sell his Warren and rebuy it, so he's got his 8 farms as well. And now we are through the early game where everybody tries to get up to their full economy, and we can see what they want to do here. QQ checking for a mine. It's a great spot for a mine. And it looks like dgrazian is going to sell it. Mines aren't bad. Even if your opponent knows where they are, they still have some use, but most of the mine's usefulness is in the surprise, right? So looks like QQ is going to grab this expansion here. dgrazian is going to drop his skunk Warren, and if I know QQ, he's going to see the tier 2 Warren, and he's going to maybe feel safe to drop his arty. He sees 2 tier 1 Warrens, and there's the skunk, so he could go home, sell a tier 1, and buy an arty cannon here. There it is. See, this is the thing, and even if it's predictable, it's hard to beat this because dgrazian does not have enough of an army to take this out. 6 squirrels versus 6 squirrels, you know, the arty cannon is probably not going to get taken out, and there's also a bullet hive, turret, MG, whatever you want to call that thing there, defending the drumfire cannon going up as well. So that's going to go up totally fine. dgrazian sees it, so he's going to drop the badger and just try to tech up and do kind of a 1-base badger. There are a few sharp timings with arty play. It's not as easy as it looks. QQ is making it look very, very easy, but it really has to do with scouting and finding the exact window there. He scouted his opponent going tier 2, and he knew that the tier 2 would not be ready in time, so he popped the arty down. And that's like a standard thing that he's practiced a lot. It's worth a shot, though. It's kind of fun. I definitely enjoy occasionally popping out an artillery cannon as well. Looks like QQ has farmed up pretty heavily on his expansion here, a lot heavier than usually a player would dare to do. And he's also getting a Badger of his own. And this is mostly off of the back of the arty cannon and turret kind of defense here is pretty scary to attack into. It's very strong and also even more intimidating. Even if you may be able to barely bust it, you probably won't try, especially with the squirrels supporting. Also, I don't know if dgrazian has actually... Yeah, he hasn't even scouted the expansion here, so it's a kind of a ninja expand. The Badger is out, and he has some pigeons. He has an expansion that he's going to farm up. This looks like a pretty classic timing, and depending on the angle, the Badger can do pretty well against these structures. And the skunk gas can also go pretty well because you can't walk through structures, right? So these actually create smaller chokes for the skunk gas. But here comes the arty. The Badger is revving up on those structures, but QQ's Badger pops out right away here, and in this Badger versus Badger fight, the arty kind of controlling the ground there is going to give QQ a gigantic edge. All of dgrazian's pigeons are gone, so his Badger has no support at all. QQ's is back to healing up here, and dgrazian has to back up, and now QQ just has a huge lead both in army and in economy. Very well handled defense there. Makes me wonder if it would have been better for dgrazian to try to come up from the top there, but it's hard to say. The Badger did pop out just in time, and now double Fox goes down with this huge economy. There's a second artillery cannon going up over here, so QQ will eventually try to take this third and farm up, but those two Foxes are going to be pretty brutal as well. QQ's content to not be too aggressive in attacking dgrazian. It looks like he's going to kind of poke in and then kind of pull back. No reason not to, but he doesn't have to commit here unless he can manage to kill that Badger. And here he goes. Badger's trading fire. And it looks like dgrazian's Badger will go down and QQ's will back up. So that is a good trade. QQ lost all of his squirrels in favor of killing that Badger. So that is excellent. He sells that arty to pay for all of his foxes and reinforcement squirrels just as he doesn't need it. He knows dgrazian can't attack him right now without his own Badger. So the one of the most important things about playing defenses in general, but especially arty, is you got to know when to sell them. Because if they're not being used, they're just kind of a wasted potential, right? So he sells it, pays for his double Fox. He sells all his squirrels too, so a little bit risky maybe, and he farms up super heavily over here and pops down some more defenses. So QQ is in the process of moving most of his value over to this corner of the map, which is going to be almost impossible for dgrazian to assault. Meanwhile, if dgrazian wanted to play the long game, his third base is very far forward and exposed. So QQ is going to start making a headache for his opponent with the double Fox now. So far, just overkilling a couple of squirrels, but dgrazian knows he is outmatched, and QQ takes game 2. Welcome into the chat. We've got Sasha popping in. Yeah, absolutely. So casting is open for everyone. I'm going to make an announcement about that in the casting channel, but yes, absolutely. dgrazian here in the blue, down 0-2. Let's see if he can get a point on the board here. And QQ on match point. QQ is the more experienced, higher level player in recent events in recent times, so it's no surprise that he's taking the lead. dgrazian is definitely playing very well, but QQ just an absolute monster to try to face off against. And it looks like QQ going for a bit of an owl ferret play this time, also bringing the squizzard, so totally different deck. One of the most flexible in play styles of all of the strongest players here. QQ probably these days around top 10 tooth and tail players, easily top 20, but probably top 10 as well. And of those, one of the more flexible players in a series, just totally changing up his deck here. dgrazian sticking with his plan. It's a really solid deck too. It's a great plan. The only weakness here is the you only get one tier 2 slot with this deck, and he's done some skunk, and now he's doing the falcon, but that is the cost you pay for having the squirrel, mole, and the mines, and the pigeons for the badger, right? So if you wanted a second tier 2, you'd have to sacrifice something else in your early game, right? QQ here grabbing an early expansion with just one Squirrel Warren. dgrazian with 3 Squirrel Warrens, so maybe a potential to push in, but QQ has put a few really far forward mines there. That would pick off a couple of squirrels, maybe injure some others, and give him a very advanced warning. You can see the vision from the mines there. So QQ is being pretty greedy with his farms. dgrazian farming up as well, not interested in attacking. Also note the rush distance is pretty kind of long and windy on this map, and with this cabin in the middle, it's just a lot of factors that lead to a safe greed here. Jason Blade in the chat, you'd imagine moles would be sacrificed for a second tier 2 slot. Yeah, that's what I would do. I would say either moles or maybe mines, but it changes the playstyle for sure. There's nothing wrong with the dgrazian's deck at all. Every deck is going to have some weaknesses. You can only pick 6 units, so. Both sides totally up to their 16 farms, and QQ dropping 2 Owl Warrens up here, as well as a Ferret. Where's the Ferret? Over here. That's a strange decision. The Ferret is usually a very aggressive pick, whereas going for double tier 3 is usually pretty defensive, right? So this is not exactly, like, I don't fully understand his approach here. Maybe he's faking. He's going to fake some Ferret pressure to keep dgrazian from coming back and scouting the owls. Meanwhile, dgrazian is going Mass Falcon, which is not a bad idea against owls and ferrets. They're flying units, and the owl's mice and the ferret shells can't damage flying units, so it's not a bad idea, especially considering QQ has dropped his tier 1 entirely, and that's usually the better counter to falcons. So we'll see how the Mass Falcon can do here. Also going to be excellent with all these cliffs. You can see the falcons having no problems just seeing right up all of these cliffs. So I like the approach for sure. I don't know if I would trust it myself, but here we go. A little bit of cliff abuse. Gonna pick off some pigs from the high ground here. And it looks like QQ is now spamming out tier 1 here to try to fight those falcons. He is going to have to sacrifice some of these pigs. It's not much that 2 falcons can do against the whole horde here. And it looks like, oh, that's what the ferrets were for. He built them on the side, and he rallied them around the side, and they've already picked off 3 Falcon Warrens were picked off, as well as several pigs. So those absolutely paid for themselves already. That was really sneaky. I didn't even see it happen until I saw the Falcon numbers were 7 out of less than 7. That was insane. So, sneaky stuff there. Insane value. And now QQ is going to run in. dgrazian just has the 7 falcons that he can't even replenish. And there are 2 owls worth of mice here coming in. And the falcons will eventually clean up the mice, but the mice have gotten some value as well. Let's see, a couple of tier 1 were picked off. A couple of pigs, a warren. A badger is on the way, and badger is the best counter to owl, generally speaking, unless you have your own owls. But it might be a little too late. The ferrets here are going to kind of force the issue as well. Ferrets plus mice waves consistently coming out, and the minefield. QQ is just crushing through. I'd love to see this kind of situation without the earlier ferret snipe from before, when he just got so far ahead. I feel like QQ's strat still works nicely, but you know, part of the reason it's working so well here is because he got really far ahead early on. And it looks like QQ is now focusing down falcons. And with the falcons gone, QQ can just win on his tier 2 alone. And it looks like he's just going to go right for the economy here. The Badger is almost out, but it is far too late to help. And QQ is going to take our series 3-0. GG's. Alright, EvilMurlock versus xnor. This is match 2 of today's stream. xnor here in the red, and Samluk, aka EvilMurlock, in the green, up at the top of the map here. This is also a best of 5 in the competitive division. So these two players are fighting for the placement into the Code S subdivision. And eventually for the prize pool that we've got building up. For those of you who have just popped into the stream, if you have the means and you're interested in supporting the multiplayer tooth and tail scene, the competitive scene, then you can DM me if you have non-monetary things you'd like to donate, like Steam keys and stuff like that. Or you can support the stream here, and I'll put all the proceeds from the stream towards the event. So thanks for that. Both guys here getting up to 8 farms on opposite sides of the map, and there is a mine dropped for EvilMurlock. 2 mines dropped. That one looks like it's within vision range, yeah. So xnor may not be aware about it. It would have showed up on his mini-map. Yeah, it looks like he's actually not aware of it. Bear in mind that we can see, not only can we see everything because map hack, but we can see where the commanders are not. But if you're playing, you know, if you don't see it here, you don't see it at all. Your camera is locked to your commander. So looks like EvilMurlock is going to expand very quickly here, and he's using his mines to give him advance warning of xnor pushing forward, which xnor is doing, which means EvilMurlock is ready. He knows that this is coming, and it's going to slow down xnor as well. He's checking for more mines. So those few seconds, precious seconds, are going to buy EvilMurlock time to get his squirrels built and in position here. He's actually going to wrap around for a bit of a flank, try to catch xnor not able to retreat. So a fight is forced here, and it looks like about 4 to 4 squirrels for a second. Oh, a little bit suboptimal targeting there for a second, but EvilMurlock with his reinforcements is going to push xnor back. xnor has some cams on the way here. He did lose a couple of extra squirrels, so any lead that he might have in a potential timing push is a little bit weaker than it would have been. But he is going to step forward with his cams and see what he can do this way. Welcome to the chat, everybody else here. We've got Winterload, we've got Kerpa. How many games am I? I'm going to cast 4 matches today. I've got lined up. I've already done the first one. This is the second match. We're going to do one more competitive match, and then an open division match. Here, xnor is pushing in with his cams, getting on top of EvilMurlock's army here, and it looks like those cams are going to fall. Have they done enough damage? It looks like no. EvilMurlock is going to hold those moles. The moles helping to tank and deal damage very well for EvilMurlock. Also bear in mind that the first mole builds faster than the other tier 1s, so even just the timing nature of getting those moles out to the fight a little bit quicker makes a big difference. And EvilMurlock taking the lead in army, and then he also has that second base up. And he is steadily farming up more and more, so EvilMurlock taking a bigger and bigger lead. xnor looks like he's maybe getting a little bit desperate with his one base. It's becoming pretty all-in. He's going to go for the boar and see how much damage that can do. Meanwhile, EvilMurlock is moving forward with his units here. He's leading with his moles, so he's hoping to not take too much damage from the mines. Alright, EvilMurlock getting on top of xnor's stuff. A Warren immediately pops from the mole's structure crit. Then xnor's army gets on top of him and starts to push him back. Looks like the cams did fall again, but they did their job, saving xnor, and his squirrel army is mostly untouched. And the boar is on the way, so It looks like xnor does trade pretty favorably in that engagement. Looks like EvilMurlock is... You can see the army graph there popping right back up with all of those Tier 1 warrants. And with the Tier 1 based army, that's actually going to be fairly weak to a boar. It might not be weak enough for xnor to push through, but it's definitely going to give him a better shot. Boar is kind of seen as a counter to mass Tier 1 units with its AoE. And he is going to grab a farm here so that he has some staying power in the game and move on forward. Soaking Mines with the boar by itself is excellent. Look at these mass amounts of squirrels and moles, and it looks like he's splitting them to try to mitigate the boar AoE, and the boar goes down almost immediately. Is that enough? There's a cam coming out for EvilMurlock, but xnor is going to get on top of his expansion here, taking out the cam. It looks like he's going to go for the mill, but does he have enough DPS? It looks like he does. That goes down. EvilMurlock has no economy left. As much as the boar died very quickly, the boar bomb did enough for him to push through. But now EvilMurlock is going to push back across the map, maybe. Yeah, he's selling down some of his Tier 1, but he has still 8 squirrels, a falcon, a cam. That falcon is going to be a lot of trouble for xnor. He sells down his boar warren and grabs some farms, but I think that might be a mistake here. EvilMurlock actually has the better army yet again. The second boar always hits harder than the first, so I would have hung on to it, but maybe he just didn't have enough to... You know what? I'll eat my words. xnor with some fantastic targeting on the Tier 2 totally crushes EvilMurlock's counterattack. And takes the game. Wow, that was pretty back and forth. The board turning the whole game on its head. I totally thought EvilMurlock had it. Let's go into game 2. So these two are pretty evenly matched. That game was pretty back and forth. xnor in the lead, though, in the red. And EvilMurlock in the green, in the right of the map here. It's a kind of an interesting map. It's pretty close rush distance, but this little choke here is pretty tiny. So very easily defendable, especially with mines from either side. Which means the more open path is going to be up and around this cliff. So I feel like the mines are going to do pretty nicely here. We'll have to see what these players want to do with the early game. Welcome in, Studios. Thanks for the sub. 15 months in a row. Holy shit. VIP right here. Welcome in, Scav. Thanks for being here, everybody. So let's look at the decks real quick. Both players running boar. I think EvilMurlock is playing the same deck as he had before. Yeah, that's about as much of a meta deck as you can get here from EvilMurlock. Squirrel, Mole, Cam, Falcon, Boar, Mine. I can't think of any possibility that is more meta than that. And xnor up here, running with the Boar Snake Cam. Interesting. Okay. Excited to see the snake here. I'm curious what xnor wants to do with it. Usually snake is a pretty spicy cheese unit and pretty niche. But let's see if he wants to try to use it in his late game comp. Thanks for the sub, Scav. I don't know why I didn't play a notification for that. That was a Prime sub. I appreciate the hype for the event. Like I said, all the proceeds from my stream while the event is going on are going to go into funding the prize pool for the competitive division. These two players here fighting for their spot in the Code S. Looks like EvilMurlock trying to expand here, just like last game. And xnor grabbing the boar much sooner. I think this definitely is the more normal timing for a one base boar kind of cheese. It's not even a cheese at this point. It's just a one base all in kind of thing. Let me rephrase. It's not a cheese or an all-in. Those mean the same thing. It's just a one-base strat, really, getting the boar out. But EvilMurlock is ready to punish. He's waiting for some moles here, and he's going to go in with about 18 Tier 1. And xnor going to rely on his mines and his single cam here to try and hold. One mine goes off, the other, or two mines go off, one is picked off. The cam out in the front here trying to keep the moles off of his warrens, but looks like two warrens do go down, and xnor is actually out of tier 1 reinforcements, so this might be just a little bit too much. EvilMurlock keeping his commander alive and regrouping his forces here. Two pigs have gone down and all of the tier 1 warrens. xnor just has a cam and about 20 seconds for that boar. Now, if that boar pops out, that'll be big, but I don't think EvilMurlock is going to let him have it. The cam goes down almost instantly, and he's focusing down the mill. That's going to be game. EvilMurlock not letting him have it. That is tying up the series 1-1. All right, xnor up in the top here, trying to play with the one base boar, and it gets shut down by EvilMurlock with the mole plays down here. It does seem like some of these newer, more modern players, I should say. There's a couple I have in mind, but EvilMurlock is definitely of the kind of the younger player base, newer player base, I should say, to the game. And some of the things that they've been doing really, really well, some of the rising stars, has been shutting down greed. Moles are really strong these days, and these players get how to use them to shut down any inkling of greed. They're ready to pull the trigger at any moment. So xnor, it's more of the conservative style from the older premier players to kind of try to greed up and match each other's greed and not get punished. But in these days with this patch and this meta, you just got to be a lot more careful with that kind of greed here. So let's see what xnor wants to do. I don't mind the one base boar, but can he do it a little more safely here? We do have a couple of questions in the chat. Welcome in, Lindana. Let's see. Would MGs have worked a bit better? I don't think so. I generally find mines to be about the best for holding stuff like that. It depends. If you had enough of them, sure, but if you have enough of anything, sure, right? So, I don't know. MGs are a bit of a tough one. Also, specifically, the MG versus mole kind of matchup is a bit tricky, since moles are melee, so they lose to MGs, but they're also structure crits, so they beat MGs. So it kind of depends on which side has the critical mass of either unit, right? Enough MGs, they won't get touched. Enough moles, and you get on top of the MGs, and they go down instantly. They both counter each other at the same time, if that makes sense. It's true, though, that MGs do make the commanding your forces a little bit more stressful and complicated, since you can lose your commander if you rally in too aggressively. We have seen that from some of the stronger players as well, just kind of carelessly rallying and losing the commander, and somehow they do really well anyway, but that is something that MGs can do that mines don't. So here it looks like EvilMurlock, yet again, he is trying to expand, and it looks like he's ready to pull the trigger on any kind of greed. But xnor just sticking with one base mass squirrel, getting some cams. And here's the deal with squirrels and cams, is if you throw in some moles at the last minute, squirrel cam mole is one of the most powerful and terrifying pushes, timing pushes, in the mid-game of Tooth and Tail. Before Tier 3 come out, this is as good as it gets. EvilMurlock, I think he realizes something is up, so he's got some mines here, he's got the high ground, and he has moles on the way, as well as a little bit of extra economy. The longer that xnor waits, the more that economy is going to kick in. But here we go, gonna lead with... Oh, he's going to lead with scouting. Excellent, very nice. Cam comes in, and xnor just taking his time. EvilMurlock trying to get some cams of his own and adding some extra moles here. He is very patient with his defense, but here we go. Both sides rallying in and trying to focus down. Those cams are lasting a long time, doing plenty of damage. There's a lot of split firing here between warrens and the base, but the expansion goes down, and with that, EvilMurlock will repel the attack. But that was a lot of damage. xnor trading his large army for the base there. There was 3 farms on it, so that's definitely a lot of value. EvilMurlock is going to try to go for a counterattack, but I don't know if this is going to work. Against an opponent that has so many Tier 1 Warrens, the refresh of your army is so fast that the counterattack, I think, was doomed from the start. I think he had to have played for a longer game there. Counterattacks are tricky. It depends on what kind of units your opponent has, right? So xnor with the economy to rebuy his Tier 1 just holds easily and is going to push back across and start damaging Warrens now. Another one goes down there. Cam gets up here and EvilMurlock taps out. All right, xnor in the red, taking the lead again, now on match point. And EvilMurlock in the green. Some very close games here, and he's ready to trade his army as a counterattack or as a punish to greed. But let's see, has xnor kind of cracked the code here and just be aggressive? EvilMurlock has tried to expand every game so far. Maybe it's time for him to shake it up and try something different. Go a little bit more tech heavy instead. We'll have to see what these two have in mind. This is a pretty close rush distances. They're right across the map from each other with plenty of road, so we're going to have to be really careful here. xnor is not bringing moles this time. He's actually doing the cam skunk pigeon. So a little bit more sustain with his pushes, a little bit more counter Tier 1. EvilMurlock has been running pretty heavy Tier 1 numbers. Lots of squirrels, plenty of moles. So the skunks would be a perfect answer to that once they're up. EvilMurlock is going to stick with his fast expansion here. It seems to be working pretty well. I would say the expansion is not the reason he's lost any of the games he's lost. This expansion is also a side back expansion, kind of like moving away from your opponent's base, whereas last game he was expanding forward, which is always a little bit trickier to defend. All right, cams are going down for xnor, so he is playing the tech route, whereas EvilMurlock is playing the eco route, the expand route. That is kind of a classic matchup in mid-game of Tooth and Tail. One player going for an expansion, the other player going for tech. And it doesn't always mean that it's going to be aggressive. It definitely means that xnor can threaten a push, just like last game. That worked very well. But he can also just take a later expansion, and it can work just fine since he has a lead on his little tech race. Meanwhile, EvilMurlock is in the position where he has to be very careful about his own tech and his own farming up on his expansion. He has to be ready for a fight. That's why he's sticking with Tier 1 right now, just going mass Tier 1 so that he can stay alive with his single farm lead while keeping an eye on if xnor is going to expand at all. So it's a little bit of a dangerous game to play, but it is one of the points where this game that can sometimes be pretty mirrored, depending on the decks, can get pretty asymmetrical pretty fast, if that makes sense. xnor going for the one base boar yet again. This time he is much more prepared to hold. He does have his cams, and he has a decent number of squirrels already up. EvilMurlock did scout the boar there. There's skunks on the way as well, just in case EvilMurlock wants to try to push with his mass Tier 1. I don't think that's going to go too well, but he's going to maybe try it. Here we go. The moles are dropped. He does have an extra 3 farms here. xnor did wait a little bit before adding those, so let's just see here. He's adding some mines on that high ground. That would be a good angle for EvilMurlock to come in, so that's smart. The defensive mines, even if EvilMurlock knows those mines are there, you can't exactly take them out because you risk losing your commander, so I do love how EvilMurlock is being patient with his moles, but then the skunk gas comes out and he's forced to engage. That skunk just doing really well here, and he's actually targeting squirrels and letting the moles get cleaned up by reinforcements. So excellent tactics from xnor there, using the skunk to force the fight and then rallying right to the back and taking out the more vulnerable squirrels. The moles were all getting pummeled by reinforcements and pigs as well anyway, so that was really, really, really almost perfect micro from xnor. That's what you want to do. And look at that army spike. Absolutely brutal. That's what I call a pro gamer move right there. Incredible. So he is going to grab his expansion. This is a very, very safe expansion. Looks like EvilMurlock is kind of going all in here, and I don't blame him. The boar is going to be out, and there is going to be an expansion with a farm, and yeah, EvilMurlock's in trouble. Oh, he's going for a base trade. Oh, I see. He's going for the base trade here. So the mill was just there to be able to burrow, so he's waiting for the push to come out, and the push comes out indeed, and he's going to try to base trade with 9 moles. I don't think 9 moles is going to do it, though. Problem is, there's 2 bases that he has to kill, and there's reinforcements, and there's pigs shooting. Maybe, but let's see how it goes. I do like this idea. xnor seems to be suspicious of something. Yeah, he's ready to go back. He does not want to lose to a base trade, not this time. So he is going to run back, and there's no way that 9 moles can take out 2 bases with the army closing in. He might be able to take out 1, but that doesn't even matter. And with that shut down, I don't see any way out of this for EvilMurlock now. I think all of that came down to the single skunk forcing the engage and the really, really, really good army control there from xnor. I don't know how that could have gotten any better there right after 4 minutes. That was incredible defense. He knew from previous games in this series that EvilMurlock was going to try to fight him, so excellent series playing as well. And now he's just destroying any chance of a base trade. He's grabbed a second base of his own, re-grabbed a second base, taken out EvilMurlock's forward base, and he is putting on pressure yet again. Plenty of mines that look like they're almost set off there, but the boar is getting on top of everything, and there's plenty of squirrels to shoot up, so the falcons can't do it either. EvilMurlock playing excellently this season. I do really like his playstyle, but xnor just a little too strong, and is going to take this series 3-1. As we see this game wrap up, well, let me not score too quickly. As we see this game wrap up, let me say that the 3-1 is better for EvilMurlock than a 3-0. Not just, maybe for his pride or something like that, but just in the actual way that it's scored. If there is a tie in the Swiss round, the tie will be broken by the actual game score rather than the overall match score, if that makes sense. All right, we're not calling it over just yet. EvilMurlock has enough money to rebuy a farm here in just a second. He has 10 seconds, and he is setting up for some ridiculous base trade, but he needs to get home and buy that farm, and his commander is being shot at. EvilMurlock starves out. I think he had a pretty close idea. He was going for that, but he lost track of his timer. So xnor does take the series 3-1. Kipo versus Tatanka. Best of 5. Tatanka here in the blue in the top right, and Kipo in the bottom left in the red. Now a little bit of background on both of these players. Tatanka has been called by some the best player in the world at times. He was the one behind the brutal domination of the Wolf Owl during, I think that was a year or two ago. He's also just a very powerful meta setter and off-meta player. I would say he's less flexible than QQ in a single match. He tends to stick with what he's playing with, but over the course of months, he'll try something new, and he'll stick with that for a while, if that makes sense. And I would say it's off-meta, but the problem is he finds things that are good enough that they kind of become meta. This is an exception, though. He has been playing with snakes a lot lately, and they just haven't really caught on, but they definitely have their uses, and I'm curious to see if he's going to try this on Kipo. Kipo, on the other hand, Kipo is my original mentor in this game, like years ago, 3 years ago now. Kipo is the one that was my clan leader and taught me the basics and kind of got me started. So I like Kipo as a person, and I respect him as a player. He is a little bit off and on when it comes to activity in-game. He'll disappear for a bit, and he'll come back. Always a strong player, but Tatanka's a little bit more active. So just experience-wise, I would have to favor Tatanka a little bit in this match. But let's see what Kipo has up his sleeve. One of the scary things that Kipo misses out on when he doesn't play all the time is some of the kind of spicy plays that Tatanka brings out. People are generally pretty aware of them once they come out because he's well watched and well played. You know, a lot of people play games with him, but Kipo might not be aware of some of the things that he's gonna potentially be up against, like the snakes. But we'll see. Both sides are expanding safely. This looks like a forward expansion, but it's definitely side. This is a hard wall, so the only way between them on this really split hourglass map is this one tiny choke. So Kipo's feeling very safe to expand and farm up. Oh my gosh. What? Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm actually going to switch here. This Mole Warren is going to potentially... Yeah, he's going to force a sell on those farms. He got one swing off. So tempo-wise, that was good for Tatanka. Actual value-wise, I think that's actually better for Kipo. But, I mean, it's a small thing. It's kind of an annoyance and maybe a mental victory for Tatanka. Yeah, Unprecedented Studio said it better in my chat. Tatanka is probably the most observed player in Tooth and Tail. Yeah, that's pretty true. He's one of the, if not the most observed player. Here he comes with his snakes, and Kipo with his tier 2 focused comp is going to have a little bit of a struggle against the snakes. The snakes are going to do really well against cams. Snakes have always been a counter to cams, straight up, and now even more than before. That cam is just going to die in a couple of seconds here. It might be better to pop it in the water here. Yep, there it goes. So those snakes easily paying for themselves already. Jason Blade saying Tatanka almost in top 4, almost always in top 4. Yeah, I would say he's always in top 4. Yep. What would water do for the cam? So water will boost natural regeneration at the same rate as a single snake tag. So if your cam had one snake tag on it, if you sit it in the water and leave it, it will just kind of be in stasis. It will not take any damage until the snake tag times out at 20 seconds. So it would absolutely save the cam unless it has more than one tag on it. That's what it would do. Yep, exactly. And taking damage from a poison tag doesn't count, so that doesn't stop the water regen. So yeah, if you're ever stuck with a valuable unit that has a snake tag on it, or multiple snake tags, leave it in water and that'll counteract one of the tags. Obviously pigeons are even better, but you know. Yeah, so the water and the poison ignore each other, and they both do their healing or regen at the same time. That's why it neutrals out to nothing. So if you have a cam with 17 hit points sitting in the water, it'll stay at 17 hit points frozen until the poison tag times out. Both sides getting up into their third bases now. Tatanka dropped a boar a little bit ago that I missed, and also a lot of falcons. So this is going to be a brutal boar falcon timing. 10 falcons. All right. This is one of the best combinations of units in the game. The boar and the falcon, match made in heaven. The super tank AoE and the super DPS, like infinite scaling flying unit, the two just go together so well. And they're both very meta units, strong units right now, so there's not much better than that. Kipo also has the Boar Falcon as his comp of choice. He's got the same 5 Falcon Warrens, the same Boar almost here, just a little slower, but that's fine. His eco is a little bit faster. Kipo is relying a little bit more on cams and moles to be additional tanks, which I actually really like. The additional tanks, instead of relying only on your boar, it just gives a little more staying power after a potential boar bomb. On the other hand, Tatanka has a snake, and he can run through the opponent's army with his snakes and tag down opponent's falcons and guarantee a boar death. So that actually goes really well in Tatanka's favor. Oh my gosh, Tatanka's boar dies, Kipo's boar dies, and at the end of the day we have 6 falcons for Tatanka and 2 cams for Kipo left alive. I don't think they're snake tagged. But yeah, that's a favorable situation for Tatanka there. Between the micro of that fight, the falcon targeting, and then the actual just snake tagging, that worked really well for Tatanka. He's a master at just making sure his tags are spread evenly. On the other hand, Kipo does have a little bit of extra eco. And the game's not over yet. That was only a little bit Tatanka favored in that army trade. So Tatanka's boar gets paid for about 25 seconds ahead of Kipo's. It's tough. We've got somebody in the chat saying Kipo should have played defense. It's tough to play defense in this situation because Kipo doesn't have a 4th base that he can take at all. He has to break out of this little area. Tatanka has base number 4, 5, and 6 that he can take, potentially. 2 of them are at risk of being cliff abused, but you know what I mean? Like, Tatanka feels a lot more comfortable on the map. Here we go. Here's the push. A couple of MGs there getting taken down right away, and the snake tag's just tearing through everything, not to mention Tatanka focus firing with his falcons much better, so he takes it off of a couple of micro fights. Going right into game 2 here. I did say that I favored Tatanka just slightly, being the more active player. And even though he is more observed, Kipo not necessarily one of the players doing the observing. I don't know how up-to-date he is on some of the strats. But at any rate, we have totally different decks here. Kipo running the Boar Fox. And this is a beefy Boar Fox comp. I love it. This is the kind of Boar Fox I would play, potentially. Falcon Cam, Squirrel, and Pigeon. Over here, Tatanka doing a totally different deck as well. This is kind of a structure-based Owl-Falcon kind of thing with some ferrets as well. So I don't exactly know what the plan is here, and I think the point is that you have multiple plans you can enact. There's a couple of different strats you can pull out of this deck, so I'm interested to see what Tatanka wants to do here. All right, both sides are very content to just go right up to 8 farms without any earlier shenanigans. That is generally the goal of the early game. Everything that happens in the early game is revolving around the idea of 8 farms, right? So you either just get 8 farms, or you attempt to stop your opponent from getting 8 farms with some kind of rush. The only reason to not get 8 farms besides a rush would be trying to defend yourself against a rush. So, and even inside of those rushes, the goal is to either kill your opponent outright, which is almost impossible if they're the same skill level as you. More likely, the goal would be to just delay your opponent so you can get your 8 farms up before them. Just kind of the way I think about it, but many players will just go ahead and skip that early part and get right up to the 8 farms, which is totally fine. And then the game really, really branches out, and you can do a lot of different things. Both sides here electing for an expansion as well as an early tier 2. Looks like Tatanka is setting a bit of a forward base up. He's got an MG. He's got a balloon that's on its way. The MG will help keep the balloon safe. I really like that balloon placement. It's going to give Tatanka a lot of vision and a lot of control over the middle of the map, while he gets his ferrets ready to push. Kipo is going to try to shut this down, but I don't think it's going to be in time. The balloon is going up. Let's check the vision. Yeah, look at that insane vision. That's like the whole map. And it certainly is that whole center choke. The only way that Kipo could manage to get around is if he went all the way to the top corner of the map. And now the ferret poke begins. Now, the water is going to make things a little bit wonky. Water slows down all of the walking units, so it really is going to slow down the ferret pressure, like literally physically. Meanwhile, Kipo's flying army is not bothered by the water. It is bothered by the balloon, though. I will say that if this game does go long, we might have a similar situation as last game, where Kipo is stuck on 2 bases, maybe 3, a couple of cabins. Whereas if Tatanka holds this choke, he's got 5 bases? 6 bases? Holy shit, he's got all the bases on his side of the map, the way he's cutting it. So I don't want to say that RNG is a huge factor in who's winning the game, but based on the playstyles, Tatanka is taking advantage of the map as it's come out in a way that's going to put a lot of pressure on Kipo. He is going to drop the boar. We'll see if he can get the fox up. I'm afraid that if he tries to drop both of his tier 3, that might be an opportunity for a ferret player to just push through. But Tatanka is away getting a shitload of farms over here, so it's quiet on the battlefront for the moment. Yeah, it's not necessarily like Tatanka has the better map, therefore he wins, but it is a more comfy map for his playstyle, for sure. The Falcons here have to watch out, because I think... you know what? I'm a bad caster. Correct me in the chat, guys, but does a balloon one-shot a falcon? Or is it more like almost one-shot? Yeah, okay, so it's not quite one-shot, but a balloon will take out most of the falcon's hit points in one shot, so maybe a balloon shot plus a squirrel shot would do it. Or pretty close. At any rate, it's not great for a falcon to be within balloon range. It's pretty scary. You got to be careful. Thank you, guys. You're the best chat. Tatanka here is just getting super greedy. He's got 21 farms, and he's going into Mass Falcon, which Mass Falcon and Mass Balloon are both... Balloons and Falcons are two of the 3 best scaling units in the entire game, by far. Either one, if you get in Mass, they get pretty ridiculous. Oh, okay, so there you go. It takes the Falcon down to 2 hit points. So a Falcon shot, or sorry, a balloon shot plus basically anything else does the kill. Now Kipo is going around with his boar, and Tatanka can see literally everything. So he's going to go for a base trade. He has 4 bases, whereas Kipo only has 2. So I think Tatanka just wins this base trade for sure. Kipo is going to wrap around. Oh, you know what? Kipo does have that campfire, and he has this base as well. So you know what? Kipo might just win this base trade if he plays it right. The balloon getting plenty of value here. Tatanka is on top of that base, and it's a lot for me to keep track of. Sorry, we're just going to watch and see. 1 base left for Tatanka, 2 bases left for Kipo with the 3rd on the way. I think Kipo takes this. I think Tatanka just miscalculated. He needed to fight, right? That was a really powerful comp from Kipo, and maybe Tatanka didn't count on Kipo having the campfire and that other base ready to go right away. So Kipo knew exactly what he needed to do to set up that base trade, buying all the mills on the map as he went through, and he takes that game. Nicely done. And see, that game is what I mean when I say maps don't favor players. They favor play styles. They don't favor sides. They favor like the compositions and stuff. We were looking at a map that allegedly favored Tatanka, but Kipo just masterfully executed a sweep. So try not to use the map as an excuse for whether or not you can win a game or not. Think rather, how do I use the terrain to my advantage? And Kipo did it. Tatanka was using it to his advantage as well, trying to set up the balloons in the middle, and then he made one fatal mistake. So we are tied up here. Tatanka, the heavy hitter in the blue, and Kipo, the returning mentor, in the red. This is one reason why I really like Tooth and Tail as an RTS. There's a lot of reasons, but one of them is base trades are kind of a threat always. They're like at every stage of the game, just about. Maybe the very early game, not so much, but at almost all stages of the game, base trade is like kind of a legitimate thing. And it doesn't make the game as much volatile as it just... I don't know, it's just like you always have some kind of tactical option. It's definitely a breath of fresh air when compared to other RTSs where you don't really get base trades as often. They do occur, and they're kind of fun when they do sometimes, but this is the game that has them as like a feature all the way throughout. Some players are definitely more vulnerable to a base trade situation than others, and it sounds like Tatanka from the chat. It sounds like Tatanka is like not the most stable when it comes to that. He's willing to take risks when it comes to base trades, whereas some other players are a lot more stable. And maybe that comes with just experience. Tatanka is actually a newer player. He started playing the game, I think, about 3 years ago, about when I did. So compared to some in the community, he is a little bit of a newer player. And there are a lot of factors. You're all identifying them very well, but there are a lot of factors. It's never an easy answer when it comes to base trade. Here we go. Tatanka pushing forward with Skunks on the high ground here. This is really brutal. Skunks are such good sieging units here, and one Warren already goes down, even with the pigeons on Kipo's side. In one way, the pigeons keep units like that Cam alive under Skunk Gas, but they're also, that could have been 3 more damage dealing units. So Kipo holds, and I like the pigeons here because the cams were out, but I think Tatanka still has a pretty nice engage there since he took out that Warren. Kipo's spreading himself a little bit thin here. The cam goes pretty far forward, but the pigeon's keeping everything alive, and he almost lost his commander there. You gotta really be careful with your commander. I like the way Kipo's playing this, though. Both sides do have an expansion. They are farming up. Kipo's getting some falcons. Tatanka with the superior tier 1 numbers here. He does sell his Mole Warren, and he gets into snakes. And I like the Mole Warren sell. A lot of people will say, but you're losing a lot of efficiency that way. I mean, a little, sure. But sometimes it's okay to eat the 20, 30, 40 food loss, whatever it is, in exchange for having the proper composition. He was willing to pay a little bit extra to make sure he had 12 squirrels there instead of 9 squirrels and 3 moles. Think of it that way. Just cost a little extra, but now he has the right comp. Yes, in the chat, talking about StarCraft 2 and some players coming from that. Yeah, Tatanka was a Masters StarCraft 2 player, yeah. So he has RTS experience for sure. Which definitely gives you an edge in... Oh, that snake goes down instantly! Oh my gosh, shut down! He was going to try to snipe a pig or two. Even one pig can technically pay for itself there, but Kipo on top of it and just shuts it down instantly. Very nice. Also the pigeons there. I don't know... The pigeons would have probably helped to keep a pig alive as well, so a little bit wasteful from Tatanka, but that's fine. Tunnel vision is right. Anyway, yeah, the RTS experience can really help, but some things like base trades, like I was saying, it's so unique to Tooth and Tail in that way that might be why Kipo was able to get that off so easily. Let's see if that cam can get saved here. So far the pigeons are healing everything but the cam. Oh, so the cam did fully heal up. Very nice. A little bit of skirmishing here and there. The snakes definitely get value in these kind of skirmishes, but so do the pigeons. And it looks like Kipo is able to push through and get a little bit of extra economic damage. The squirrel reinforcements are going to pick off Kipo's army and push him back, but he's going to stick with it. Another wave of reinforcements coming in, a cam and a falcon and a couple more squirrels. And those pigeons just sustaining this push. And he's going to go for the base. The cam goes down. Can he do it? He does it. All right. Now, can Tatanka do a counterattack? I think that's the only thing he's got left in him. There's no tier 3 on the way for either player. And Kipo knows all he has to do now is hold his expansion. The snake is on the way, and it just takes out a squirrel. Tatanka taps out, and Kipo takes the lead. This series is definitely turning on its head based on what I was expecting. If Kipo takes this, that qualifies as an upset, the way I'm seeing it. So Kipo here in the red on match point now, bringing out the snakes of his own. And Tatanka in the blue up against the ropes. He is bringing out a wolf boar, and he is dropping the snakes. It looks like Kipo is just too ready to answer the snakes. Boar Wolf is not a combination we're used to seeing. I would love to see a tier 3 fight between Boar Wolf and Boar Fox. And this map looks pretty defensive, so we might very well see at least 2 base play here. Let's see. Kipo running Squirrel MG for his opening, and Tatanka with Squirrel Mole. And like we said earlier, Mole versus MG is kind of a toss-up. It depends on positioning and critical mass and other factors. So it's hard to see. Let's see what these players want to do. Obviously, both players are going to go right for the 8 farms. They're both macro players for sure. Tatanka going right for the 8 farm expand. Kipo playing it a little safer. 8 farm single warren. It looks like he's going to go for his own expansion here. Good star sense, just realizing that Tatanka's probably going to expand on his own, and he's not going to sell. It can be tempting to try to be tricky. And Kipo in particular sometimes falls victim to kind of selling and swapping his plan a lot just to try to be unpredictable and tricky. Sometimes, though, the best plan is to just do exactly what you meant to do, even if it's scouted. And that is exactly what Kipo is going to do here. 11 farms just on a single warren. Tatanka is going to accept the falling behind an eco and go for the asymmetrical game, getting his cams up right away instead. So tech is dropped. Looks like Kipo did see the tech there. So he dropped some tech of his own, and it looks like the snakes are going to be a pretty solid choice here. If your opponent is going heavy tier 2, snakes can be a really good value generating unit. And it looks like the game has cooled off for a second. Both sides are macroing up. It's a pretty long scout distance, so, you know, fewer tricks you can kind of do here. Both sides trying to just get up to their 16 farms, similarly to how in the early game you want to get up to your 8 farms. It's less cut and dry here, but that is the idea from both of these players, is they're just going to get up to their 8 farms, or their 16 farms, and then see what they want to do from there. Both sides have a single tier 2 of choice, and it looks like both sides know what the other's choice is. Kipo hasn't seen the cams, but he could guess. And there goes the wolf. And in classic Tatanka fashion, instead of dropping the boar first and then the boar's support, which is exactly what Kipo is doing, he's going to do the wolf first because the wolf can buff the other tier 3 warren when it comes out. Classic move all the way back from the wolf-owl days. Wolf and owl have always been a great combo, but people were sleeping on it. They didn't realize until Tatanka came through and kind of invented the concept of wolf first and then owl to get out an incredible mice pumping machine, basically, in record time. You could drop the wolf warren and then as many owl warrens as you like, and every owl warren is going to basically pop out so much faster. And at that point, you do not need to worry about eco. It turns the game's economic math on its head. Here, he is just using it for a regular fighting unit, the boar, but it's the same concept. Kipo, on the other hand, is getting the boar and the fox. Both sides grabbing a 3rd base. Tatanka actually grabbing a 4th, probably for vision, I would say, watching out for flanks from that side. Or you can kind of split your eco onto 2 different bases so that you don't have all your eggs in one basket. We'll have to see what he has in mind, but we are getting exactly what I was hoping for, which is going to be the macro tier 3 versus tier 3. Big beefy fight. Both sides have plenty of bases on their side of the map. Kipo has a decent 4th. Tatanka has a 4th. And then there's this 5th that they can both kind of fight over. And maybe it goes to Tatanka, but I really would be surprised if we get that late into the game. Fox against Wolf is very tough, since the Fox, much of the Fox's strength is relying on its speed as a swift unit to outrun its opposition, whereas the Wolf makes every unit swift, right? So you can chase a Fox a lot more easily. That doesn't mean the Fox automatically loses at all, but it does make it tricky. Now Kipo running in here with the snakes, and it looks like he does tag 2 pigs. So that's worth it. But Tatanka is ready for the counter push right now. His Boar Wolf is out. His Wolf Buff Falcons are ready to go. Kipo needs to get really good fox shots here. Oh my gosh, that base went down so fast. Holy shit. That's so good for Tatanka. He is going to push through, and Kipo's boar is about to die and does almost nothing. The fox goes down, and now we just have Wolf Falcon on top of Kipo's base, and it looks like Tatanka's just going to take it. That base goes down as well, and Tatanka ties up the series. All right. Match 5, the first one tonight. Tatanka down in the blue and Kipo in the red. The whole series is going to come to this one game. Think of every other game as a warm-up, and now it's a best of one. And I did not expect this, to be honest. No disrespect to Kipo, but I figured Tatanka was going to have the edge. But Kipo is just absolutely playing right along with the top 5 players here. Pulling a masterful series. And now both sides again shaking up their decks completely. We've got a very aggressive Squirrel Lizard Mole with plenty of tier 2 from Kipo. Kipo does love his tier 2, having plenty of options. That's the way he taught me as well. And Tatanka with a super meta Badger style. This is like, again, as meta as it gets as far as Badger decks go. Skunk Falcon, Squirrel Mole. Kipo doing a little bit of mole cheese here, and Tatanka is ready to sell. But forcing 2 sells like that is, I think that's generally considered very worth it for the mole player. We have the mole scientist in the chat here in Urbane Olive. So Urbane, tell me, I think that's pretty solid, right? It's a lot of tempo for sure. Now here's the deal. This is a very, very, very long map. Like, rush distance about as long as it possibly could be, almost. There's no road in the middle. They're on opposite corners. And that really favors Tatanka here in the deck and the style I think he's bringing. He's getting Falcon first since he knows it's going to be hard to push. Oh, double tier 2 right away. And he's got the tier 3 that he could do. Meanwhile, Kipo, he's got the aggressive deck and he's going to try to play it aggressively, but it's a long way across, man. Technically, Squizzard is going to absolutely trounce the Skunk Falcon Pigeon here, but how long is it going to take him to get there? That's the real question. Kipo dropping maybe a Mole Warren in the corner? I don't know. I think he's got to go, right? He's adding another Lizard Warren, so ready to go. If he drops a Mole Warren in the front and he's got Squizzard Mole, Tatanka might be in trouble. I don't think he knows how aggressive his opponent might be able to be, but Kipo has to go now or he loses his advantage. As soon as, like, both Skunks, both Falcons, all the Pigeons, and then more tier 1, if Tatanka can get more tier 1 up, then suddenly his army is just way better. There's a second Squirrel Warren already. And Kipo's about to lose his commander as well, which is not what you want to happen here. Okay, so a pig goes down, a falcon goes down, looks like another pig, and Kipo's commander goes down as well. So only 1 pig died here. I don't think that was enough. Oh, and he's going to kill the Mole Warren as well. Yeah, I definitely favor Tatanka hugely here. Kipo is playing out of his mind. That was a really good rush, but losing your commander, and he wasn't targeting right. He was just kind of letting the damage spread a lot, which is so good for the Pigeons. You have to focus fire down what you need to kill there. Otherwise, it just gets shut down completely. Look, he's just rallying in and kind of tap rallying, and so a Falcon takes some damage, a Skunk takes some. Yeah, this is definitely Tatanka favorite a lot, even more now. That was so greedy from Tatanka too. You're right. There was snakes earlier in the series. There was a lot of not pre-8 farm aggression, but a lot of aggression right out of the gate with tech. And Tatanka just went blind tier 2, double tier 2. So the micro was a huge factor there. Yes. So focus firing if done poorly, can throw a match or throw a game completely, and if done well, can win a fight that you had no business winning. So Kipo is stuck here now. He's got some lizards, so he can kind of be tricky with them, but Tatanka has the comp he wants. Now that he has a couple of Falcons and Skunks with tier 1 support, he's just going to beat everything that Kipo tries to throw at him here. And Kipo taps. Tatanka does take the series 3-2, but it's almost a reverse sweep. So I'm very impressed, and that was exactly the kind of series I hope to see more of